Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. And I've just come out of the gym, and this is about my third attempt at recording this introduction because the oxygen in my body is all down in the juicy gains in my legs. Basically, I'm just putting it out there that I have done my one annual legs day. So that one's in the books, Legs Day 2021. I'll see you in a few months. Guys, we have a great episode for you today. It's all about talent. And you're thinking, guess, why do we need to know about talent? Well, I'll tell you why, noble listeners. Because your business can't run without it. Because if you are a leader in the military, you need talented soldiers to make a successful platoon. If you are looking at getting into business when you leave the service, or if you have already left the service, then you need to know what people are looking for when they're recruiting so that you can get into the best jobs and make yourselves a lovely, nice, lucrative career and a fulfilling career, because it ain't all about money, is it, guys? But it is also about money. Our guest today is Mike Sarraille. He is the CEO of EF Overwatch, an executive search and talent advisory firm and leadership consultant with Echelon Front. He is a former Recon Marine and retired US Navy SEAL officer with 20 years of experience in special operations, including the Elite Joint Special Operations Command. That's JSOC for sure. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. He's a hell of a trigger puller, and you guys will know him as he's part of Jocko's operation. He was one of Jocko's Task Force Bruiser out in Iraq, so you're probably familiar with him from Jocko Podcast. I met him out in Austin. I want to say thank you to my friend Zach for putting on that event out there, because without that, I wouldn't have met Mike. And I really, really enjoyed reading his book that he's put out there. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about Mike's service. So let's get into it, shall we, guys? It's a great episode. Thank you for being here. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Mike Sarraille. We'll just we'll soft roll into this, but I just want to say, first of all, great job on the book. Really enjoyed it, and we'll come in to cover some of that on the back end. I got a lot of questions about the book, but if you're cool with it, obviously we'll stay away from the tier 1 stuff. But I'd love to talk a bit more about the time, your time in the SEALs. But to get into that, just to begin with. Do you think that you were born to be a warrior?
Hell, I don't know, man. Like nature versus nurture. I can tell you this: I wasn't born into a military lineage. Not a military background, but at a young age, I was drawn to it. I don't know if that means I was born into it. Well, I was born on Veterans Day. November 11th. Yeah. The way my dad put it was, he's like, I always had this feeling you were going to go to the military, because I wasn't the biggest kid growing up. I'm pretty big now. And he's like, you never liked bullies. If you saw a kid being bullied, even though it was by a huge kid, you'd run over and like just shoulder check that guy. And then I'd end up getting my ass beat. But he's like, I just knew you were going to end up in a profession where you went after bad people.
Where's that come from?
Maybe it's from being the small guy,
right? Quite
frankly, and sort of, genetically, my family's not, we're not blessed, as you can tell. But God, I hate people picking on other people. I hate evil. And it goes back to the old quote, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to stand by and do nothing. Do I think it's a rare breed? Do I think warriors are a rare breed? 100% without doubt. Because all you have to do is an example of look at some carnage going on where maybe some guy's beating a woman and there's a crowd of 50 people. And what will those 50 people do?
Film.
Or at least 49 of them? Just stand there and watch.
Yeah.
But that one person to say, no, not putting up with this, walk over and stop that from happening. And there's plenty of examples of that, tragedies going on and people just stand to the side watching.
Do you meet a lot of people in special forces who had that special operations kind of community who had that attitude? Because we've had Delta guys on that said exactly the same things. We've had Australian guys on that said exactly the same things. Is that a pretty common thing, like growing up hating bullies?
The common thread let me step back and tell a story. So when I was a Recon Marine, which was at the time like the Marines version of Special Operations before they officially joined the Special Operations Command and created MARSOC, is I took my platoon home because I was at Camp Pendleton, California, which you've been in that area, San Diego.
Oh, yeah.
My parents lived up towards San Francisco, and all the guys have sleeve tattoos, and they look like a biker gang. And when we walked through the door, my mom's like, she didn't know how to take it. And the second they opened their mouths and just said, Miss Sarraille, and they came and put their arms around her. And, after that weekend, she's like, those are some of the most intelligent, articulate, respectful, and humbly confident men I've ever met. Mm-hmm. And, the military as a whole, I don't want people to get this image, because I think the movies totally do us an injustice. They make us look uneducated, and we all know this is the most educated military. The British military, the U.S. military, these are the most educated militaries in the history of mankind, because you can educate yourself online while sitting in Afghanistan helming province, or in Iraq, or in Syria. But, I wouldn't say it was a common thread amongst, it doesn't matter if it's special forces. I don't think it was a common thread amongst the military. Was there a percentage of people that believed in that? Yes. But, the thing about special operations that a lot of people get wrong is that everyone wants to get in a gunfight. When people talk about SEALs in the American public, they paint all Navy SEALs in rose colors. They're like, oh my God, all you guys are great. And I look at them, I'm like, no, not all of us are great. There are a share of cowards amongst our ranks. Really? There are guys that just wanted to get the Trident, and the first time they saw combat, they were no good. And then there's guys that wanted to go into the fray. They wanted to go into the fray, and they wanted to affect change, and they wanted to do good. And I've seen some statistics. You've probably seen this as well, of all the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. The same 10% of the troops run the majority of combat over and over again. You take it to another level with the tier 1 guys. I mean, if all SEALs were great, how come 98% of them are over here and this 2% are in this category over here?
Yeah.
So, but I will tell you the best SEALs I've met. One, they were good fighters. They didn't mind a scrap, but they truly wanted to protect the innocent and punish the evil.
So you think like those people are coming through that we would say quote unquote cowards? Is it like they're joining the SEALs because it's some kind of like almost like let's say they're college athletes and then it's the next step in they almost see it like as an athletic program?
Hey, first off, Garrett, I apologize if you hear somebody yelling in the background. That's Jocko Willink of the Jocko podcast.
He's trying to sabotage my podcast. I knew he was after us.
Later, I'll have this problems off. You want it like this? You want it to look like this? Cool, I got it.
Oh, he knows we're coming for his number 1 spot.
He's always fired up. It's not healthy. I'm just wondering when that guy's going to have a stroke. You can't maintain that.
Well, I hope not, man, because I enjoy the podcast. But for anyone listening now, they know that Jocko, that they see as Jocko, that is the authentic Jocko.
Yeah, you know what, man? I served for Jocko when I was a young officer. I'd served my time in the Marine Corps. I was a sergeant, switched over to the SEALs, and Jocko pretty much helped me salvage my young SEAL career because I was in some bad incidents. The guy is legitimately one of the top leaders I've ever worked for. He's that good. That's why his following is so massive. Even in the UK, it's massive. And eventually we got to get over to London and hold a muster.
Do it, man. Do it. That would be awesome. I've been working on my burpees in preparation for that.
I've got a hip surgery coming up. When they all do in the morning, I'm like, I'm not doing burpees. Yeah. I just
the lockdown was great for getting back onto some kind of body weight kind of stuff, because I mean I'd be quite happy just going to do guns in the gym every day. But lockdown has forced a bit of body weight exercises back into things.
Yeah, I'm assuming you were like me. I didn't have a weight in the house. I was dying, dude.
I had a 24 kilo dumbbell, which I was really tempted to sell too, because that would have been a great return on investment. I could have made a lot of money out of that. I want to rewind a little bit, Mike, because it's you are a pre 9/11 serviceman. Am I correct to saying that? Because I think that's very interesting, because obviously, like, you guys, it wasn't really the same for the British Army, but you guys had that Pearl Harbor moment, so to speak. What was it? Was there a culture shift that you saw in the military from like your pre 9/11 days to the to what happened after the attack?
Absolutely. I've got a few stories for you. So when I enlisted into the Marine Corps, I sort of came from a very affluent area, and the same woman who was my 5th grade teacher and sort of a family friend came up to my mom and gave her condolences for the fact that I joined the Marine Corps. Whoa. And my mom, who came from very little, sort of looked at her and basically told her to get away. Mm-hmm. But that's how that area looked on people enlisting in the military, is that it was you were stepping down in life. I didn't know what to expect when I joined the Marines, and I was blown away by the quality of people. I think the military leadership is the solution to the world's problems. Phenomenal leaders. You'll never experience a team environment like that again. I also remember, pre 9/11, the American public didn't look too kindly on the military. And we've seen this during the time of war. People will put you up on a pedestal. It's the whole sheepdog versus wolves scenario. When the wolves are around, the sheep want the sheepdogs to protect them, and then when the wolves aren't away, the sheep tend to push the sheepdogs away. It was exactly that. I remember I was in Pacific Beach. I had the luxury of having a car, and me and my friends were coming home from the bars in Pacific Beach. Pulled up to some girls, and my buddy that was sitting in the passenger seat is just that good-looking dude. And we heard from the car, they're like, "Oh my God, he's cute!" And one of the girls leans forward and says, "Oh, he's a Marine." And was disinterested, but that really was a shock to me. It sort of scorned me a little bit, because then when 9/11 happens, it's just like, oh, now you're my friend. But again, as a professional, you put that aside, and when people thank you for your service, I thank them for thanking me. I think they're genuine about it. And hey, sometimes we need to be reminded that unfortunately, evil is a real thing, and that militaries are needed. That this profession, the profession of a warrior, is one of the oldest professions in mankind, and it will continue to be around. We all want a perfect world without war. Unfortunately, that's not reality.
I got to speak up in defense of that girl, though, because I've been at Pacific Beach with Marines, and and to be fair, she probably had some bad experiences. So I'm going to stick my neck out on this one and stand up for her. What's your favorite bar in Pacific Beach?
Oh man, I can't even remember. It was
is it that long? Is it that long ago? Is it
2008? Whatever that main strip was, we usually just hit that main strip.
Garnett.
Yeah. Yes.
See, I'm I like that area, so to say. I've always wanted to live there, never happened. But yeah, it's not a bad place in the world to be stationed. I forgot to ask you, did you commission then, or did you go in enlisted?
So I went in enlisted in '98. Went straight to recon out of the School of Infantry, then went to sniper school. And this is how I owe the military everything. I owe them, and my parents in the military, everything. So the Marine Corps looked at me in '99 and said, "How would you like to become an officer?" And all my buddies that were enlisted, even senior enlisted, they're like, "Dude, there's nothing going on. Go finish your college education if they're offering it to you, and take a commission." So they told me to apply for something called the Marine Enlisted Commissioning Education Program. Of course, we're the military. We have to throw an acronym on everything. It's called the MECEP program. And they sent me back to school while active duty, counting towards my retirement, on active duty with active duty pay as a sergeant. And dude, I went from being like a 2.9 GPA in high school to a 3.7. And I didn't get smarter. I learned discipline. I learned leadership. I learned how to commit and how to accomplish a mission. And when I went to Marine OCS. During my college years, I made the decision, hey, I think the next challenge for me is, because I'd worked with some Navy SEALs, I was highly impressed, is everyone says, BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition School, or, known as SEAL training, is some of the toughest training in the world. And I'm like, hey, I got to give it a shot. In the Marine Corps, because their department in the Navy said, hey, go for it. You've got to submit a inter-service transfer. I did. It was approved. And then I competed for a slot in SEAL training and went to SEAL training as a young Navy ensign. But in reality, I was still very much a sergeant in mentality. And so that did work to my favor going through the training, is sort of the guys naturally, because the majority of the classes enlisted sort of respected me as that prior enlisted officer. And I enjoyed it. BUDS was a good time. As long as you surround yourself with good people, it's a good time. Even the worst of times can be a great time.
Nothing like pissing on your buddies to stay warm, to keep you guys happy. To build a bond. You mentioned the word compete. When did you fall in love with competing?
That's something that I think my parents drove into me. Is we used to have, my dad had this phrase. It's pretty basic. He said, the Sarrailles, because my last name is Sarraille, the Sarrailles aren't the smartest, so that means we got to work the hardest. And nothing ever came natural to our family. So he drove this sense of like drive into all of us. We could do nothing half-ass in our family, or you would bear the brunt of my father's wrath. And my father was a pretty scary dude, still is. If that 42-year-old Navy SEAL, retired Navy SEAL, is saying his 75-year-old dad is scary. But my mom and dad really laid the foundation for, and I do believe that. I think parents are the first line of maturation and development for young leaders. And if some people don't have that growing up, the military is a great place to get it. But really, my family put that sense of healthy competing and drive into to all of us children.
Given where you came from, if I'd say one of the affluent area, probably strongly middle class kind of area, what was it like coming up against people in the Marines, for people from terrible inner cities and people from had the shit beaten out of them as kids? Was that eye opening?
It was, dude. And that's why the military is so amazing. I know it's the same for the UK. Everyone comes from such different walks of life. And I didn't come from a middle class area. I came from a, no kidding, upper class area. It's the heart of Silicon Valley. And, my mom and dad came from nothing. We were never in want as children, but my parents laid into us hey, you better blaze your own path. Because even though my dad had built a company, none of us were inheriting that. But, you hear the stories of these people, from all of a sudden I'm next to a huge black guy from Louisiana or a farmer from Kentucky. And you're talking and hear their stories where the farmer's oh yeah, we were up at 4 a.m. working the farm every single day before school. I'm like, my God, I don't know if I could have taken that as a kid, but that's what he was used to. Father, guys with fathers that were not around because they were in jail, yet were just the most well-rounded young men. People that had chips on their shoulder because of their upbringing, but they came around. And no matter your background, everyone starts at zero. Everyone starts at zero. Doesn't matter about your level of education, how much money you had. If you enlist in the Marine Corps, you're all worthless on day one, and they build you up. And when grown men who are impressive are crying because they're getting their Eagle Globe and Anchor on their collar, that sense of camaraderie, that brotherhood, even more so, with your platoon in Afghanistan. We are lucky, and I want vets to hear that. We are the blessed. We band of brothers.
Absolutely agree, and I don't want to go into the book just yet, but that's something that, because I can be very critical of, well, everything. I'm critical of myself. I can be very critical of the army. But when I was reading the book, that was one of the things that kept thinking like, fuck, I really am lucky to have had this, like the military leadership school, so to speak. I don't want to get into that just yet, but what I would say is, because I've heard often that the Marine Corps is a cult, right? And then you go into the SEALs. Do you ever have like a bit of an identity crisis given that you've had these two ridiculously strong identities? Was there ever that kind of like, who am I?
Funny enough, to the guys around me, they always called me like the Marine. My nickname was Captain Intensity. I've never been the guy that like was like the cult member. I was proud to be a Marine. I was proud to be a SEAL. But like you just said, man, there's times we hate the military. You've got to look in the mirror and remind yourself the military is not a perfect organization. Yeah, it's flawed. It's run by humans. But I enjoyed both organizations, and quite frankly, the Marine Corps laid the foundation for me to be successful. And I loved the SEALs, and I have a very close-knit group of friends from the SEALs. But there was also things about the SEALs I didn't like. There was a lot of drama, dude. It seemed like there was a lot of drama. There is with that community. They for some of them, it's usually the guys that are not the best SEALs are the worst representatives of the community because they think they have everything figured out. And they act like that because they have the weight of the SEAL name behind them. We did have those shared people, and they were out in town running their mouth about how they were a SEAL while the other guys were quiet and just, dude, all I cared about was like going to war as many times as I could. That was like all I cared about, going to war with my people so that we could actually affect change over there. But there's good and bad with both communities. There's good and bad with the military. You just got to accept at the end of the day that they're humans. They're run by humans.
Did you see that video a few months ago of the guy? He was getting a burrito and he was like unloading on the guy at the burrito store. Did you see that one?
Yeah, we were mortified as a community because throwing the SEAL out there, and I feel for the guy, dude. He didn't know he was being videotaped. He was definitely hot. That sucks. I'm sure we all, if we videotaped ourselves 24/7. There'd be a lot of embarrassing moments, but that was not a good show for the community.
Yeah, but I think it kind of ties into something that you were mentioning. It's hard to not jump ahead to the book, but it's you're basically saying that when you go for an interview and assessment, you are being assessed at all times, and that's very true for civilian life. It's not civilian life, sorry, just life in general. If you are a SEAL, you are constantly being assessed as being a SEAL. If that was any other guy, that wouldn't have become a thing, but because he was a SEAL, it became a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that just you have to accept now, because the sad, like you said, guys have bad days. Sometimes I go through things that I voluntarily put out myself and think, what the fuck was I thinking? But what I think it's that can cost you a career. If you're a tier 1 unit or something, that might be you done. That might be you done. They might not want that kind of thing associated with the brand, and you could be done for one little outburst. And so important to just keep that control of yourself at all times.
And it's also nothing in life is fair. So I'm not saying it's unfair to military members, but hey, the media is waiting for someone in the British military to do something wrong so that they can put it in the front page. And of course, we can sit back as military members and say this is unfair, like anything, like we're being watched. Yeah, that's sort of the nature of the beast. Even more so is you get in special operations, something you do downrange could end up in international news. You have to understand that. You got to, orientate your behaviors accordingly. And you've seen the SEALs in the news over these certain incidents. And before people rush to judgment, all I would say is, find out all the facts. Find out all the facts. Like Eddie Gallagher, I wasn't there, man. I do things smell fishy and sound fishy and smell fishy. Yeah, I wasn't there, and so I'm going to refrain from giving an opinion on that one. That and the fact is, the guy served his country for close to 19 years. So he's human. If he did make mistakes, he's human. I do feel like our brothers and sisters are sometimes thrown under the bus too often. Even though we have mistakes, dude, If the business world wants us to look internal to their affairs, ethics violations are much more common in the business world than they are.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
The military, one of our senior leaders maybe does something unethical, it's highlighted.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons when one of these things happens, people jump on it is because we do all want such a high code of honor. And if we see something that we think is wrong, we'll jump on it. And I'm guilty of doing this. I've jumped on things without knowing all the facts, but it's because we want to be held to the highest standards. That's what we want.
Yeah. It's, that is part of being a warrior. It's the burden. Absolutely.
So, Mike, one of the things obviously we're going to talk a lot about today is talent. And I was wondering, is there a difference in like what we would call the kind of talent pool at Marine Corps boot camp versus Buds? I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other, but is there a difference in the talent that you get at these places?
Yeah. You know what? Without offending anyone, yes. The answer is yes. The talent pool that the SEALs or the Green Berets or MARSOC or the Air Force, CCT and PJs communities, it is definitely a higher caliber than your general population force. That's not to discredit anyone's service. And let me put it clear, like I don't care if you served 20 years in the Army Special Forces or 20 years as a fiscal officer, you both served your country in the capacity that was right for you. Everyone contributes. But I think the lore and the fascination of special operations has naturally attracted. I mean, we had NCAA athletes, which means that's like the Division I college athletes. We've had Olympic athletes. We've got people coming from the Ivy League schools that all want to compete for the SEALs or the Green Berets because that is the biggest challenge for them. And that's a good thing. When somebody says, oh man, that's a huge challenge, I think I can do it, and they give it a shot. I'm wildly proud of them. But definitely, if I had to look at the people that were in my Buds class versus the Marine Corps boot camp, there was definitely a difference in talent. That I was, on the battlefield, the Marine Corps in the U.S. Army, I was blown away by what they can do, what the common man could do. Uncommon valor, you've heard the old quote, was a common virtue, regardless of your level of talent.
I was finding it very interesting, like the recruiting pool in America. I think is very different to the British one in the sense of you do have the traditional guy from a broken home, doesn't really have the like tough kid, joins the military. But then you have I think there's people who might be real high performers who join out patriotic reasons, which isn't really something that exists in the UK these days. And then there's also like you said, you mentioned the NCAA, the college sports. We don't have that system in the UK. So you're going to come in young, or you're probably not going to come in at all. We don't have people that are going through a pipeline, an athletics pipeline, coming out a few years later who are then like, okay, because I've said this before, and I don't mean to be derogatory. I think a lot of military guys are like tier 2 athletes. It's like you've always loved sports, you've always loved getting after it in sports, but you don't quite have what it takes to go pro. So it's like, right, what else can I, get smashed in my fitness in? Is that something you kind of agree with?
Yeah, the one thing about the U.S. military is our spend, our discretionary budget is larger than anyone else. I mean, we put a lot of dollars towards attracting talent. I did see a statistic recently, and don't hold this to me, that of all the military-aged males that are eligible for service in the United States, only 3 out of 10 qualify for military service. They hit the gates, the intelligence gates, the medical, mental, didn't use drugs. I was shocked by that number, but that shows you the high standard that the military holds itself to. Here's the thing about talent is you talk about people coming from broken homes, and then you talk about that rich kid coming out of the upper class area of London. You don't know who's going to make it. The kid coming out of the upper class area could be he could have everything we want. Amazing athlete, mentally tough, and the kid that came from a broken home just, lacks character. We don't know what talent looks like. And that's the thing. It's like when in Buds, you try to guess who's going to make it through SEAL training, and you usually be 100% wrong. You'd be like that football player from Florida State. That guy's going to make it. Easy day. Because he's an athlete. He played at a high level. And that kid that did speech and debate in high school, a debater who never played an organized a day of organized sports in his life, ends up making it through the training and the football player drops. We don't know what it looks like. Until you push someone to their edge, you're not going to see what their true character is. Only at one's limits, mental limits, does true character.
And you did well at Buds, right? So you did well. Your true character was obviously, well suited to Buds. What is it? What would you say was the kind of the building blocks of that success for you in Buds? Maybe not from childhood necessarily, but those key kind of characteristics about what was going on in your head. What were the kind of things that you were telling yourself? What kind of attitude did you have going in and through that training that made you come out successful on the other end?
Well, dude, for Buds, it was simple. I had a great prior enlisted major in the Marine Corps at Texas A&M. That when I commissioned, he's like, I'm proud of you for going to the SEAL training. He's like, let me remind you, you may be a Navy officer now, but in everyone else's eyes, you're still a Marine. So when you go to training, represent the Marine Corps and do not fail or you will embarrass us all. And I remember that going through trainings. I'm like, you know what? He's actually right. If I fail, people will be like, oh, another Marine that tried out for the SEALs and quit. When I joined the military, I always was fascinated with the leaders running the training or assessment selection that you aspired to be. And they almost became like big brothers. And maybe that's a bad way to look at it, but I always wanted them to prove to them, like, I deserve to be here. And the other component of that is I love leading because I fail more than I get it right. But when I know the person next to me is suffering, and if I can, through leadership, motivate them for 1 hour and help pick them up, dude, the emotional return on that is the greatest thing I've ever experienced in life. And so I knew my job was to lead and potentially help lead others to get past the training. And, I ended up getting something called the Fire in the Gut award from Buds. It was that, hey, the question was, who's the person that you most want to go to war with? And it was myself. And then on the enlisted side, another individual who's still active duty, so I won't mention his name. But that was like the greatest accolade I could get. There's also something called the Honor Man in SEAL training. And that's the guy who had the best run times, the best, academic scores. I was not that guy. I was not the best at anything. But the one thing the Marine Corps instilled in me and I loved doing was leading. That doesn't mean I got it right. Sometimes I let my guys down, but I wasn't afraid to step into the arena and give it a shot. And because of that, I think I learned at a quicker rate than all my peers because I was failing. Rapid fail fast, and then get up and learn.
So I'm not going to say that you never felt miserable because that's obviously impossible in those kind of situations. But rather than look inwardly and think like, oh God, I'm so cold or I'm so tired, it was like, that guy looks cold and tired. I'm going to go motivate him. And then by the more people you're motivating, the more you get motivated yourself. So you never really have time to sit there and feel sorry for Mike Sarraille because you are leading the other guys.
Yeah, that is good. When you occupy yourself, you take your thoughts off that pain. There was a moment where psychologically there was an instructor that nobody liked, and they had us up on the sand berm as the sun's going down, and the temperature's dropping, the wind's picking up, and this guy was just a raging dick. To the point, didn't have to be the way he was. And actually, it turned out that was his true nature. He was just a dick. And he had whatever students were remaining in Hell Weeks waving at the sun saying, what was it? Goodbye, sun. Hello, darkness. It's going to be cold. And we just kept doing that for like 10 minutes. And this guy's yelling. And there was a moment that I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to go knock this guy out. And then knock him out and drop him training. And it was another officer who just this guy was like the prototypical leader. He was quiet. And he looked at me, he's like, shut up, dude. And that's all it took to snap me out of my one moment. It was like, he's just like, I trust him. He's like, Mike, shut up. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're right. But that was the closest I got to potentially dropping from training. It was the psychological component of they got under my skin when I was tired.
Is that something that it's always been your thing? Has it been people that's bothered you more than elements?
It has. It has. Somebody said this, bro, teams win. Individuals don't win. Even if you're wrestling, two teams wrestle and you've got the people that represent the certain weight classes. Even if you win your match, but your team loses, you've lost. If your team doesn't win, you've lost. I always have been, and this is not a good trait. I've been brutal towards people that I can sniff out that they are selfish and they're not a team player. And I would almost, in a bully-like mentality, unfortunately, single them out as not being a team player, which I'm not proud of. But I think my train of thought was if I can bully them into becoming a team player quicker, everyone's going to be better off for it.
Well, the thing is, though, we bully the enemy into doing what we want. You don't go knock nicely on someone's door and ask them to come in.
Yeah.
So it's there is sometimes a bit of bullying. You want to. It's domination, isn't it? You want to dominate the battlefield. You want the battle space, and you want to. Sometimes people need to that, but it's fun. It's funny because you were saying about the body checking bullies when you were a kid, and then the bit that almost put you over the edge of the. Buds was a guy who, in your mind, I guess was bullying recruits. So it's it's hard to, you have to find those control measures to put in your life because it's all based on a very good principle. But then you would not have been able to protect those people later on in their careers if you'd have got kicked off of Buds for going hitting an instructor in the face. So it's a long game, isn't it? I suppose with a lot of this stuff.
It is a long game. That's great that you drew those analogies. When I went back and I was the director of something called the Junior Officer Training Course, which is the last, the SEALs the officers that make it through training. I was the last line of professional military education before they check into a team, and I always remembered the instructors that were just again. Absolute raging dicks for no reason. And, there was good leaders, usually the quiet leaders that everyone respected. They're like, hey, there's no reason to that. And you're going to block whatever you can teach them. You're going to shut them off. And he's like, it's the big brother approach. And I was always, whenever I trained younger officers, it was always the big brother approach. Is when they made mistakes, help them learn from it and become better. If they did something that was like, an error of laziness, it's almost like, hey, I'm not upset. I'm just I expected more. Walk away, and they will be running through their head that they let you down, and then you build them up. But I always enjoyed, and I put a lot of time into training the younger officers because, quite frankly, they were the future of the community, and they were going to stick around when I knew I was going to leave.
Yeah, if you love the guys, you got to give their leaders the time because otherwise, it's the guys that's going to suffer.
Yeah.
So how was it when you got out of Buds and you went to your first unit? What was your position and what was the situation like that you walked into?
So, SEAL Team 3 was deployed forward in Iraq. So I deployed forward and joined them, and I was supposed to become an assistant officer in charge of the platoon. I met the platoon commander, the guy who was going to be a platoon commander. And literally from a 5-minute conversation where I thought I was extremely respectful, when the rest of the team deployed back to the United States, I stayed on with the next SEAL team that came in. Okay. And all of a sudden I get not a phone call, but an email from one of my other junior officer buddies that I went through training with. He's like, dude, what'd you do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you were relieved as an assistant platoon commander. I'm like, how can I be relieved? I've not even taken the position yet. And whatever reason the guy, one, it's because my wife knew his wife and he was getting a divorce, I think was the primary cause. And so, but I'm a new guy. So I ended up as an assistant operations officer for a 40-man SEAL element called a task unit. And this was my first experience. When I come back from that deployment, we're going to start a training cycle. It was the most toxic environment I've ever worked in. The two senior leaders of the task unit could not get along. The finger pointing started, the backstabbing started. our task unit was combat ineffective. And it had some great, like some of my closest buddies were from that task unit. We laugh about it today, but it was just, this was my first experience of the SEAL teams. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? I actually thought, I'm like, well, I'm going to do this next deployment and that will put me at 4 years and I'm done. And so towards the end, before we were supposed to deploy overseas, the commanding officer fired those 2 senior leaders, in a sense, moved some people around. And because of what had happened, me getting fired as the AOIC, then me sort of, because I had threatened one of the toxic leaders that as a young junior officer, I threatened to knock him out because he was backstabbing the senior guy. And he was just not a good leader. And he was duplicitous. And it was ruining it for everyone else. And so they labeled me officially as a trouble child. And they turned to an individual and said, hey, this kid deserves one last shot. He was in a bad situation, and we need to determine if he's salvageable as a leader. So here's this guy who's finished number 1 out of every Marine school, to include OCS, where I was the honor man, gets the Fire in the Gut award at SEAL training. And all of a sudden, I'm labeled as a problem child, and potentially they don't know if I'm redeemable. So they turn to their best combat leader, Jocko Willink, and say, hey, would you take this guy on for this deployment? And the first time I met Jocko, because it's the same SEAL team, so the same hallway with the offices, I walk one office down and knock on the door to check in to Jocko's task unit, which is known as Task Unit Bruiser in the book, Extreme Ownership. And before I even can walk through the door, he moves right in the threshold, as if almost my face bumps into his chest. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. He's like, follow me. And he takes me, and I'm like, things just couldn't get worse. I'm in a downtime in my life. Takes me into the little like cistern room that, where the major AC units are and heaters, and he tells me to get at parade rest. And I get at parade rest, and he reads me a counseling chit. So now I'm getting counseled, and I haven't even checked into his task unit yet. And he basically said, here's the standing rule. Here's my general order to you, no drama. And just walks out of the room. And I stood in that room for about 10 minutes. So I'm just thinking, like, seriously, what happened here?
Yeah.
And like, this is my first experience. And then I'll tell you what, the next 8 months of my life serving for Jocko in the Battle of Ramadi and learning from him totally was what I needed as a young leader to make the transformation to ownership, and owning that, if situations went bad, that's because of my actions, is that I'm not a victim. And it set me up for success. So the thing another too is, like, we often see like senior leaders label certain young leaders as trouble child. Is some of them are redeemable. They just need a good mentor, man. That's all it is maybe they're a product of bad mentors that led them to believe that certain behaviors were acceptable. But if there's a young 23-year-old, you got to believe that you can take that, mold him or her into an amazing leader. You just got to put time in, and Jocko was willing to put that time in.
I think as well as recognizing that the reason they may be being a quote unquote problem child is because they want to hit everyone. They want everyone to hit a higher standard, and they're getting frustrated, and they don't know how to. They don't know how to, manipulate people or coerce people into doing that by kind of like subtle means, and so they come out aggressively. But I think so much of the time, it comes from a good place. It's like, look, I want to be getting after it. I want the entire unit to be, you're fucking up for us. And I'm not like, okay, maybe I'm not saying it properly. I'm not coming across properly when I'm doing it, but it's all from a good place. And it was great that someone actually recognized that in you and looked at the body of evidence.
Garrett, another one was a guy who was also in that same task unit, the toxic one, was an amazing individual. Had grown up in Phoenix, had to defend himself in a bad neighborhood most of his life, and we loved him. He was one of my peers. He's a brother to this day. But the leaders at that SEAL team had labeled him as a trouble child, and then on the next deployment and the whole workup, they labeled him as an even bigger trouble child. And it was what you just expressed. He wanted to get into the fray. He was aggressive. He trained hard. But for whatever reason, I think lesser leaders, because he was an A player, it turned out, the leaders he was working for were B players, and they sort of hated that he was an independent thinker. Well, eventually, he submits a package to try out for a tier 1 unit. And what did they tell that tier 1 unit? Oh, he's a trouble child. You guys don't want him. And the tier 1 unit, of course, is going to be like, okay, yeah, we'll decide that on our own. Thanks for the input, though, honestly. And then he turns out to be an all-star over there. And he was there for a very long time. And his reputation was beyond reproach. So, yeah, there are times that trouble child is really an A player. And unfortunately, they're working for B and C players that just are threatened by their potential.
You mentioned word all-star. When I look at the guys that you went to Ramadi with, it's almost like it's like the '96 Chicago Bulls or something. And look at it, it's just like, you've got everybody listening will know Chris Kyle. Johnny Kim, I think, has got to be one of the most impressive human beings on the planet. And then there's the three of you in the building now. Jocko and Leif in there, and like obviously, you've got guys who went above and beyond the Call of Duty there. In a unit of 36 guys. I mean, The fact that I could probably name 10 of that unit off the top of my head says so much about it. That must have been incredible to have been in that company of men at war.
Humbling. And Ryan Jobe was another one. I went to Buds with Ryan Jobe and with Johnny Kim. And for people that don't know who Johnny Kim is, one, when he was from Korea, his dad was killed when he was in high school. He enlisted into the Navy SEALs. And when I first met Johnny, I'm like, he was totally unassuming. You're like, yeah, we'll see if he makes it. And Johnny went on to graduate Buds, become a special operations medic, become a sniper, deployed to the Battle of Ramadi, where he was awarded the Silver Star, comes back and the Navy says, we want you to become an officer, goes to University of San Diego, gets a 3.98 in mathematics, and then they send him to Harvard Medical School, where he becomes a doctor. And then after a few years of being a Harvard-educated doctor, says, I'll try out for NASA. Out of 18,000 applicants, he was one of 12 chosen, all by the age of 34. He accomplished that all by the age of 34. And my first thoughts of looking at Johnny were, how wildly wrong I was. But Johnny was just another one of the guys in Taxi and Bruiser. And Leif Babin put it, because somebody asked him, they're like, well, you guys all must have been all-stars. He was like, absolutely not. He's like, none of us, like, do we consider ourselves A players? Yes, but like none of us, like, are natural talents. And they've talked about, he's like, we make mistakes. Don't get me wrong. We made nothing but mistakes in training leading up to Ramadi and in Ramadi. We had a blue on blue. And everyone knows in the military that is like the carnal sin is fratricide. And we did that. Where unfortunately we killed an Iraqi soldier who came up to one of our positions prematurely. And what separated us, as he continued to explain, was what we did, because Jocko sort of laid the emphasis of extreme ownership. It wasn't called that back then, but you don't point fingers and you don't cast blame. We're going to have problems, but guess what? We're going to come together. We're each going to share ownership in that problem, and we're going to solve it together. And when your senior leader, like a guy like Jocko, takes ownership, the reason I use the word shared ownership is you see everyone start to take ownership of it at their respective level. Even the dude that maybe wasn't even there. And he's like, you know what? There's something in training that I can potentially help with that could have prevented that problem from happening. That's what made us different, is we just solved our problems.
Yeah. No, it was great. And, you mentioned Ryan Jobe there. Was great. It was reading the book. I liked it in the book that you've got some background to these guys as well, because obviously I've heard about them on the podcast and things, and I identify with Ryan a bit as well, because I was a bit of a chubby kid, so to say. So I used to enjoy seeing the faces of the instructors when I turn up and it'd be like, "Oh, you fat boy" and stuff, and I'd be like, "All right, fuckers," and then you come in at the front of the run. Or close to the front, maybe not all the way at the front. I was stretching that story a bit far. But with the other guys as well, it's like, I've used to spend a lot of time in San Clemente, and there's you'll know the place, behind the pier, there's a little park there, and I walk through there and I see this name, Mike Monsoor, Medal of Honor winner, and he was one of your guys, right?
Mike was, I was the guy 3 feet to Mike's right when he jumped on the grenade. So yeah, Mike Monsoor, Mikey, as we called him, jumped on a grenade to save my life and the life of another SEAL. And we still took shrapnel through the legs, 30 holes. Damnedest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, man. Like, and it's one of the things that, I'm never served in the American military, never will. But when I heard that story, obviously first in the Chris Kyle book, and then, to see what I love about it, and this is something that I love about America in general, is the way that it honors its heroes. You've got this beautiful little park with the plaque on there, and you see people going in, because we could see it from our balcony, and I'd see people going in there, and I'd see people reading the names, and it's just as one soldier recognizing the sacrifice of the soldiers. I've always thought that was so special, and I do think that America does that well, the way that it honors its heroes. How do you personally honor the sacrifice of Mikey and the other guys?
Let me come back to that. That's very interesting you say that, because when people ask me, I tell them that like the UK honors their people to a greater degree than we do.
Really?
Funny enough, you wouldn't know this, but I got close with some Canadian soft guys. And one year they're like, hey, it was 2014. They're like, you got to come up for what you guys don't call it Veterans Day. You call it Remembrance Day. And so I come up, they're like, wear your uniform, go to Ottawa where they have the main parade around the military monument. And of course, hey, you got to wear the poppy. And I was blown away by the fact that, Canada and the UK as a whole stop what they're doing and honor that. And what I told them is, I'm like, Veterans Day is just sort of a day off in America now.
Oh, yeah.
And so pretty much I've gone up there every year. I take friends. I'm like, you got to see this. It's not like anything you've seen in the United States. That's funny, the different perspectives we have on how the countries honor their fallen. Of course, won't be going this year because of COVID, and Canada's pretty much locked down. But how do I honor the guys? I'll tell you what, man, it doesn't get easier. And I used to like post pictures of them on the days that they passed. I'm like, and just something about it, man. It's just I can't do it anymore. I think the best way to honor them is, and for veterans, I know the struggle is you got to live a life of value, because they're not here to do it. And so the best way we can honor them is what we do every single day, and live your life to the fullest. And there's going to be days that you fail, quite frankly. And that's okay. Your brothers aren't up there in heaven looking down saying you're a failure. They want you to be happy, dude. Mikey wouldn't have jumped on that grenade if he didn't want me and the other guy to live a full and meaningful life and to be happy. If not, he would jump the opposite direction and save himself. You got to live, dude. You just got to live. And the problem with being a warrior, for the warriors that actually saw combat and lost brothers and sisters in arms, is this is the burden that we carry. And I don't want people to think that I'm sitting here like, hey, I had no issues. I came back from 10 combat deployments and just went back to life. I didn't. I struggled. I struggled in my own way behind closed doors. I was a freaking mess. And that there is that period, dude. And you know this well. Everyone deals with that period, that adjustment differently. And it's for some people, maybe they get through that phase quick. For others, it takes a long time. But eventually, you've got to find a way through it. And it's the realization of you're here and you get to live, and they don't. So you better make use of every day in their memory.
Do you miss it, combat?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think that the hardest part for a warrior is getting older. I would pay to go back. Every cent I had, and then another $100,000 in debt. One, my body's breaking. I got a hip replacement coming up December. I loved the physicality of it. I loved being in bad situations surrounded with the guys, knowing that no matter how bad it got, we were going to get through it. And, I tried not to think about it a whole lot because I get fired up, because even though I had 10 combat deployments, I feel like I could have done a whole lot more. And the funny thing, dude, is I don't feel like I've accomplished much in life. I don't. It's the strangest feeling, and that's probably not healthy. I feel there's got to be more, man. But yeah, I would go back in a heartbeat just to be with the guys, to spend one more moment with the guys on Extortion 17, or one more moment with Ryan or Mark or Mikey. I would give anything for that, but that's not going to happen.
What you're saying about thinking you could do more, though, that's just part of a driven mindset, unfortunately, isn't it? It's like that, right, done, next. You could have done 100 combat deployments. You could have landed on Iwo Jima and you'd be going, right, what's next? I have it. I don't know if I'd be interested to know if you have this, man. Like, sometimes I'll have a dream, but I'm on deployment and in a firefight or something, and then you wake up and you're like, I feel hollow. I'm like, fuck. Like, I'm not going to get that again. Fuck. Because, like, there's no replace that. You're never going to have that again. I mean, I hope so. I hope it never happens around where I live now, but like, there's a lot of things in life, meeting somebody for the first time, you fall in love and all that. You can get that again. You can be 70 years old and have that. But there's those deployments, you're never getting those again. And sometimes just hits you like a train. That realization is not going to happen. And it just knocks you cold.
For as complex as war is, there's something also simple about it. When you deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq, like, everything else didn't matter. And funny enough, like, this doesn't bode well for me, but, like, I had a wife and 2 children, and I would be like, the first 3 days of deployment, I would just miss the hell out of them. But there was almost like a switch that eventually hit, like, on day 2 or 3. It's like, in a sense, I don't want to say they don't exist, but they're like, I've got a mission to do for the next 6 months. I've got guys to lead, to bring home, like, and I stopped thinking about them. So I didn't call my family much on deployment because I was so focused on what we had to do. But it's like everything else shut off and life was simple. You got up, you worked out, you hydrated, you prepared for going out that night, and then you brought, hell to the enemy. And it always seemed like you'd come back from deployment, and that's when the complexity hit, because then you got to pay your bills and you've got taxes and everything else. But it was just like, it was simple. I mean, dude, I don't know about you, but, like, best shape of my life on, like, combat deployments. I was in the best shape of my life. And I felt that I was at my best. And then you come back to the United States where you've got TV and reality shows, and it's just like this lethargic nature starts to come over you.
I do think it's amazing, though, that it's something that a lot of civilians, I don't think, will get, that we used to come in off an operation and you get back in and the sun's coming up, and then you do we had armored, we had like the equivalent of Bradleys, so you might have to repair some armor or whatever, and then you go to the gym. Like, you go to the gym, and, like, people would make time for it, and I think that's people will find that so hard to realize. We had a rocket attack once, dude, and the rockets landed on the gym, and the gym went on fire. People were running into that fire. They deserve Victoria Crosses for rescuing whatever pieces of equipment they could get. They literally risked a life and limb to get in there to get these dumbbells before the whole thing, like, kind of melted down. It was brilliant to see.
Well, yeah, your priorities change, and when you have very little, you'll protect that very little with your life.
Yeah. All right, so SEALs take a lot of shit about writing books. I think it's fair to say. But something that we already kind of touched on, the whole mentality of, okay, done next. And when I was thinking about that, it came up in the book. I thought, well, that's kind of like, that's illustrative of that attitude, isn't it? It's like, okay, I've done the SEAL thing. Next, what's next? And the other side of it is, I think is, you've been an instructor. You've talked about how important it is for you to bring other people on. What better medium to be able to reach a huge amount of people than a book?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just read from the book really quickly, How I Single-Handedly Won the War by Mike Sarraille. There I was, surrounded by grenade pins. Yeah. And I know you've bruised through this a little. The book ain't about me. It's not about my war experience or anything. It's a series of interviews and research about how special operations recruits people, assesses them, and selects them into the community. I do have a few personal stories of where I totally made bad decisions. I don't think there's anything in the book that's like, I did this well. But like, it talks about Ryan Job and Johnny Kim, where I'm like, yeah, those guys probably won't make it through training. And I could not be more wrong. To reinforce a point, like, you don't know what your next day player looks like, or what university they graduated from, or if they graduated from a university at all. And so, people have like, oh, another SEAL writing a book. I was so strategic in doing this that the introduction is not about SEALs. It's about the 5th Special Forces Group, known as the Legion, and how they went into Afghanistan in these small groups. Bro, I respect all services. I love all special operations communities. They're all unique. To say like the SEALs are better than the Green Berets, and people want to get into that conversation. And I'm like, I just don't care. Like we're gonna spin our wheels here. Dude, if I was to stand up a team, if the president said, hey, Rainbow Six, stand up Rainbow Six, it would be just that. It would be people from SAS, SBS, SEALs, Green Berets, and the rest of the special operations community. And I would look for the character and mindset, not what pin they have on their chest. Trust me, there's a lot of bad SEALs, and there's a lot of great SEALs, but I respect them all. And this book, again, is not about the SEAL community. In fact, I think we talk more about the Army Special Forces community.
I would say so. Yeah, I felt that I learned more about the Army Special Forces kind of their approach than anything else. I think it was well balanced out like that. Obviously, the book's called A Talent War, so I think we should define talent. So how do you define talent?
Talent is. Really, people want to say, hey, talent is A players, talent is rock stars. We actually take one step back. When you're trying to look at somebody that you want to bring in your organization, you're trying to assess, does this person have high potential to become a rock star, to become an A player? So it really comes down to the level of potential that this person has. Where a lot of businesses go wrong is they just want to hire somebody and plug them into the position immediately. How often does that work? It doesn't. And through the research we found is just that. Like you hire high potential people, which means you hire for character and you hire for mindset. You mold them into that rock star that they become, much like Johnny Kim, much like Ryan Jobe, and every other community, Army or Marine Corps.
All right, guys, we're going to hit pause on a second. Why? Because we live in a capitalist country and we need to keep the podcast going. Luckily for us, we have sponsors that help us do that, and they do a lot more besides. I went to the gym earlier. I've mentioned this before. I trained my legs. It's not every day that happens, and it happened. You know why? Because I went a bit Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I mixed in some pre-workout from Combat Fuel with some pump-up from Combat Fuel. And oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, did I get gains? I had a great session. What did I do? Did some back squats, did some front squats, did all your little machines and all that. I don't do the one where you open your legs up because it makes me feel self-conscious because I know everybody's looking at me because I am so damn handsome. Guys, I know you lot have been after the vegan protein from Combat Fuel, and I don't blame you because it tastes like the nectar of the gods. They're currently out of stock. They are getting more into stock. So I'm glad that you guys are asking me about that. There's your answer. They're out of stock. They'll be back into stock. Pre-workout, I love it. I use it. Pump up, I love it. I use it. At Combat Fuel, use the code VSOM at checkout and you will get some money off there. I keep forgetting to ask them how much, but let's be honest, even if it's 20p, then you're better off than you would have been otherwise, aren't you? So they are out of stock on the vegan protein. They got more coming in. I will keep you updated on my social media. But I do recommend that you also go and follow at Combat Fuel. That's a really easy one to remember, at Combat Fuel. They're also linked up in the show notes, guys, as ever. All right, let's get back into the podcast. Well, I think one of it's just such an obvious point, but it needs to be made, is that if special operations, just because one of the things you hear so often is it's like the chicken before the egg thing. It's like, how can I get in this company's asking for 5 years experience? How can I get that without getting in the industry? And like you said in the book, you can't do that in special operations or you'd have no soldiers because you have to recruit people who have no experience and then give them the experience.
The military would have no one. We'd go to a high school and say, hey, who's trying out for the Army Rangers? Who has experience? So by nature, the military is we like to say in the United States, it's a Harvard business case example of hiring for mindset and character. So have you ever heard of Southwest Airlines?
Yeah,
Probably.
I love it. Love them for Vegas trips, mate.
Yeah, especially in San Diego. So the guy who is the founder and the CEO, he's no longer with us, was a guy named Herb Kelleher. And he said it best. He's like, at Southwest, we hire for mindset and we hire for character. We can teach you the rest. And that's the truth. Hard skills can be accumulated, and people with high learning agility can accumulate those skills quicker than others. And that's a lot of military members. I mean, on one deployment, you send a British Army platoon to Iraq, and then the very next deployment in Afghanistan. Two totally different environments, different cultures, and the guys that succeeded had this learning agility to learn very quickly of what was going to make them successful. But soft skills, man, you can't teach soft skills. You can't teach somebody drive. Yeah, you could, but that's going to take years of mentorship and coaching. Soft skills are more valuable than hard skills. Let me tell you why. This actually from a guy named Rich DeVinny and also Brian Decker. Both ran assessment and selection. Brian Decker for the Special Forces community, Rich DeVinny for a very selective, let's just say Tier 1 unit. And what they found is that at one's limits, when you push somebody to their threshold, hard skills begin to degrade. And all you're left with is character, a set of attributes, and mindset. And that's why even during COVID, the best engineers with the best hard skills that lacked character, the ability to deal with a chaotic environment, were worthless when COVID hit because they're stressing out, they can't maintain their emotional control, and they become worthless. That's what the military is going for. They know that if somebody is trainable, which is what you're being assessed for, can this person be trained? That and they have the character and the mindset, you have somebody that's a high potential individual.
So I know we have business owners listening. For them, how do you expose character during the recruiting process?
So here's what most organizations lack is just that, a process. If they engage in hiring, they're switching it up. So special operations, when they started screening, if you look at the lineage of special operations, there was a group called Scouts and Raiders in World War II. How Scouts and Raiders, and quite frankly, we took a lot of how we assess from the British military with your commandos. I mean, a lot of what we took. I mean, when Charlie Beckwith stood up Delta Force, he had served with the SAS, and he took how they assessed and selected people into their squadrons. So special operations, when they started out, if you looked at when they assessed and select Scouts and Raiders, it's vastly different than what we have today. This has been a process that has evolved for decades, and it continues to evolve because we know the demands on the battlefield 10 years from now are going to be different than the demands of us being in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so, one, you have to establish a process. Before you establish that process, you have to know what the hell you're looking for. A lot of companies don't know what the hell they're looking for. And guess what? If let's say you're an engineering company and you've got a civil engineer and a mechanical engineer, what you're looking for both those fields are completely different. And so you have to identify what makes somebody a high performer within those respective functions within your business, and then create the process behind it. People are like, hey, well, what's the perfect interview question? There is no perfect interview. That's like saying he's the perfect leader. It doesn't exist. If you're going to do the interview process, you should really have a behavioral-based interview, which means you're asking questions which is going to be revealed in their answers to their actual mindset and show if they have that attribute that you're targeting. Now, if you're relying on an interview alone, you're wrong. You're wrong. You have to utilize a multivariate process, which means you probably want to have them take some sort of personal assessment like the Big Five or Hogan. And if it's calibrated to your company, it will help you make that decision. The interview process, even how you conduct those interviews, how many interviews you conduct. If you make it a round table, you have people observing within the company. One of the things too is if you have a candidate coming in for an in-person interview, you want the entire organization tracking that so they can observe the person and how they act. There's lots of processes that you can have. You just have to commit to one. And then once you commit to one, you have to evolve it. With each good hire, you want to take away what went well with that hire. What went well with the process, so maybe we can double down on that. And you are going to make mistakes here, even with special operations. It's a highly evolved, highly mature assessment and selection. Quite frankly, it's the longest hiring process in the world, sometimes 6 months to 2 years. And we still get it wrong. We still get it wrong. And we ask ourselves when we get it wrong, what did we miss in the assessment and selection of that person, so that we can go back and make changes to the hiring process. And so the book is not going to be some subscriptive solution to how you should hire. It will take you on the path to creating the process that is right for you. And that's hard for a lot of companies to do. The reason it's hard to me, I'll finish with this, is, dude, business leaders, like, you may be trained to manage your P&L, profit and loss sheet, your balance sheet. These are certain skills you have. But how often do we teach business leaders, and even like the masters of business, your MBA programs, to hire people? We don't. This is the one thing that business leaders don't learn how to do. And so we're not like being critical of business leaders. We totally understand it. And when you're focused on like sales and driving revenue, you often don't focus on the component that is usually the most important to your business's success or failure, your people.
But before we get into that a bit more, I think it's worth pointing out here, because there might be some people listening going, oh, well, that's all great, but I don't have a company. I'm not going to hire people. How's that applicable to me? Well, if you don't know the system about how people are hiring, then you can't put yourself in the best position to get hired, right?
Yeah, the one thing we do. So I run EF Overwatch, which is a executive search firm. In fact, it's the only military executive search firm in the nation. And so not only do we prepare them for interview, we also prepare them to understand the process of why companies are using a multivariate process, not to beat the system, but to understand from the other side of the table what they are looking for. And if you understand what they're looking for, your probability of getting an offer letter is much higher.
And what should people be looking for in, like, because we say character. Well, first of all, let's say what's the difference between character and personality, and why is that important?
Okay, so there's a different. When we say character, we're talking about people's attributes, how they behave day in and day out. When you talk about somebody's personality, you're really bringing the one word into it. Do I like this person, or do I dislike them? When you are hiring, and a lot of people confuse culture fit. Have you ever heard that word? We're like, we want to make sure that this person is a culture fit. Yeah. What a lot of people go wrong with this is when they say culture fit, what they're really saying is, do I like this person?
Yeah, it's the school dinner table approach to things.
Yeah. Would I want to sit down with this person if I had a choice of all the tables to sit down in? Let me ask you this. Did you like all the soldiers in your platoon?
No, I fucking hated a lot of them.
But when it was time to step in or to load that helo or the Bradleys and drive out to a mission, did you have the professionalism to put that aside and operate as a team?
Absolutely. I mean, you die for somebody that you disliked.
Guys, culture fit, some people are like, we want to create a family within our company. Why would you? No, you've all got respective families. You want to create a high-performing team. Stop saying we want to create a family. You want to create a high-performing team, which means that not everyone is going to get along. But if they are professional, if they have the character to put differences aside for the common good of the organization because they, like you, want to win, then you have an organization that is high-performing that can accomplish the mission. I didn't like all the SEALs I served with, man. Some of them were more high-performing than I was. Maybe I felt they lacked humility. But at the end of the day, like you said, they were my team. That was my team, and we were going to work together so that we all won. Likability and personality are something that you do not hire for. Now, if personality you find is a key component of the position, like a sales position, like this person has to have a great personality that people like, yes, then that is a requirement for that functional role. But it's not I would say a key requirement for a lot of positions. And that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is trying to hire friends, not high-performing teammates.
So So character then, what are a few things like that you could really kind of like define broadly speaking, because I'm sure there's some positions that are different others, but broadly speaking, what should people be looking for in a person's character?
So what we did is we talked to a lot of business leaders as we were doing the research here, and then we also talked to all the special operations communities. Now, the special operations communities, the SEALs, the 75th Ranger Regiment, the Green Berets, MARSOC, already had a list of character traits that they look for. And they're all pretty much in the ballpark. They're all looking for, as one psychologist said, they're all looking for ice cream, just slightly different flavors. And then we sort of cross-reference that with business leaders that are high-performing within their respective domains. And we found these 9 foundational character attributes. Now, listen, when we had this argument or this discussion amongst the co-authors and our contributor, Dr. Josh Cotton, we first came out with like a list of 30. And we're like, that's no good. No one, you can't assess somebody for 30 attributes. So let's get it down. Yeah. And we came up with what we call 9 foundational character attributes. Drive, which is the relentless pursuit of what's next. What you just said. Okay, hey, we just accomplished a military career. What's next? And it is somebody that there's a bit of narcissism with that. It's people that are just going to drive through a wall to win. Resiliency, as we know, military training and special operations training is not designed to put people through pain and be sadistic. That's not the point. What we're trying to test for is, 1, mental toughness and resiliency, which is if I push this person down multiple times, are they going to continue to get up? You look at COVID. Why would somebody in the business world want somebody that's highly resilient? Because we continue to get pushed down in this COVID environment. It seems like the guidance changes daily. And somebody that's resilient says, okay, fine, it changed. I'm getting back up and we're going to continue in this new direction. Adaptability, which we all know is your ability to adjust to the situation to accomplish the mission. Humility, probably the most important of the 9 foundational attributes. The realization that you are always a work in progress, that you do not have all the answers, that you are never the smartest man or woman in the room. Integrity, that is a hard requirement. If somebody is unethical, one, not only will it come back badly on the organization, but from Dr. Josh Cotton, our contributor, the research he's done, ethically led organizations like the British military, like the U.S. military, have a healthier overall culture. Effective intelligence. What we found was that everyone said intelligence matters, intellectual horsepower, some of them like to call it. But what's even more important is that, it doesn't matter whether you have an IQ score of 130, which puts you in a very high range, or an IQ score of 110. What truly matters is you can use the intelligence you do have to solve problems for which there are no book solutions. And talking to Brian Decker, who was the Special Forces Assessment and Selection Commander, said that once they identified the minimal level of intelligence, once somebody passed that gate was closed. That was no longer a factor in the hiring process because they found that there was no data or correlation to increased performance due to higher intellectual horsepower. So you've got to determine what is the requirement for your organization. Team ability, which is the ability, even when people don't get along, to put their needs to the side for the overall good of the organization. The last 2 are curiosity, which is always questioning why. And a lot of leaders don't like this, is the people that are always looking at things thinking, is there a way to do this better? Or if we continue to do this, why do we do it the way we do it? And then lastly, emotional strength. Again, look at COVID. It's the ability to remain logical in a VUCA environment. And I know you've probably heard that before. For the business leaders that haven't, the military calls it VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That is the environment that combat leaders lead in. It's complete chaos. And for a combat leader to be effective on the battlefield, even though things are blowing up all around them, maybe some of their soldiers are shot a few feet from them, they have this ability to remain logical and calm and to lead their people through the fray to eliminate the enemy and accomplish the mission. We really found that interesting, was those 9 foundational traits. Let me say this, is somebody can have all 9 foundational traits. Well, to some degree, but is somebody going to score high in them? Absolutely not. Again, there is no perfect special operations leader. There is no perfect business leader. Somebody may be high in drive and low in, something like, let's say, team ability. So people are going to score on the spectrum differently on all the attributes. You just have to determine what attributes are important for the role that you're hiring for, or what are core values of your organization. And a lot of businesses don't know that. The businesses love to throw, and Ben Horowitz just wrote a book about this. Like he said, your values aren't the things that are written on the wall. Your values are the things that you exhibit in your day-to-day behavior. Even though a company says these are our core values, service, integrity, that's great. They sound great, but do you actually, exhibit those in your day-to-day behavior? And for a lot of companies, they don't.
Yeah, and what are you doing when no one's looking as well? There's you see a lot of companies when they got the spotlight on things, and they trot up all those kind of keywords and things. You mentioned combat leaders. Obviously, the military, I think it's fair to say, is a fantastic leadership school for people. Have you seen a difference though in combat? Because combat is its own teacher, and it is the most extreme crucible of teaching you will ever be in. Are combat leaders at an advantage over non-combat leaders, or are there advantages should I say that are disadvantages from perhaps being in combat when it comes into the civilian world?
You're absolutely right. Combat is the ultimate mentor. And I think somebody that has endured combat usually has a healthy dose of humility. Like, life humbles you in combat, even when you're successful. I do like what you just said. The military is a great leadership development platform. The military, not just the U.S. military, the British military, the Canadian military, the Aussies, those are the best leadership development programs in the world. Fortune 500s in the United States couldn't pay to replicate those programs. I mean, that is, well, for you guys, the British Army, much longer than the U.S. Army, but for the U.S. Army, it's been around for 244 years. It has produced per capita more leaders than any organization in the United States. So one, veterans have an increased advantage stepping into the workforce. Are there biases against veterans? Absolutely. I don't think there are any disadvantages from somebody seeing combat. I just see the upside. I'd be interested if you think there's some potential downfalls.
The only one would be ego.
Yeah.
I've been in combat. I know everything. That would be the ego one. I've definitely been there. Definitely thought I was better than everybody else. No. The only one I could see would be if you don't control your ego. I'm expecting Jocko to kick them up, door down at any second, and because he's heard the word ego floating around. But no, that would be the only one I could think of, really, is thinking you know it all. Because if you didn't get that dose of humility.
Somebody just taught me the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
You've got to go look this up. The Dunning-Kruger effect is that when somebody's been to combat, like maybe once, you've basically got an x-axis and a y-axis. You've got confidence on the x-axis and actual knowledge on the y-axis.
Okay.
And when you go to combat once and you think you've got it all figured out, you end up very high in confidence, but with very little knowledge. And they call it Mount Stupid. And then, so one, you go to Mount Stupid, and a lot of people stay there. And then as you get more experience in combat, you start to realize that you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I don't know. And there's a whole lot that I don't know. And it's sort of on this path of enlightenment. And eventually you start climbing in confidence and knowledge at the same time to become a subject matter expert. But yeah, dude, we used to see that in the SEAL teams, dude. And we call it the 1 to 2 deployment wonders. Some people, the 1 to 2 deployment guys, would go right to, oh my God, there's so much I don't know. While others would go to Mount Stupid and come back from deployment and say, I've got it all figured out. And maybe I was that guy. I don't know. But I do.
Sorry.
No, the only thing I'll say is like, I got to like my 8th, 9th, 10th like combat deployment. I joked that I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to really figure this out, I think. Now I'm starting to understand this combat thing. And I was fortunate to have a lot of iterations, but there was so much I didn't know, man.
I think age is part of it as well, though, because I do think now, I think mentally now, I think I would have been a much better soldier mentally than I was. But then, like, physically and stuff now, it's, you know, like, yeah, it's just, you're not, the amount of beating your body can take, even with you, none of this, no stretching, no foam rolling, no nothing. You could just beat the shit out of your body when you're younger and you'll be fine. So it's, if you could put the brain of a 30, 40-year-old guy into the body of an 18-year-old kid, you would have a super soldier.
No, you're absolutely right. There's something to say for life experience, man. With senior positions in the business world, we're not advocating in this thing that, like, you're going to hire somebody for a chief executive officer role that's 23 years old. One of the gates that you may have is not industry experience. Industry experience is not a good predictor of success. But sometimes life experience is, you know, there's a book by David Epstein called Range, and it's about generalists. And everyone loves to show that, like, well, if you start somebody early, they'll become the expert in their field. And they use Tiger Woods, who started swinging the golf club like when he was 1. And then, like, Roger Federer, who played like countless sports before the age of 13, before he picked up a tennis racket and committed. He had such a breadth of knowledge. And that's another reason is, you know, he was a generalist. And then he finally focused on one thing. Is what I tell a lot of businesses is that, like, military members coming out are the perfect general managers, because they've experienced, especially the GWAT, Global War and Terror ones, is because they've been to Eastern Africa, they've been to Iraq, they've been to Afghanistan, they've been to all these different environments, solved these drastically different problems, and now they have this wide experience base. And when you put any problem in front of them by somebody who's just specialized in one thing all their life, they're more equipped to solve whatever problem you put in front of them by that specialist.
All right, guys, I'm going to take a break for a minute. I'm not going to lie to you. Pre-workout from Combat Fuel is still buzzing through my veins, so I've had to come back. It's about the 10th attempt we've had now to record this, so I'm trying to slow down my voice. I need to speak to you about something that is important, so that's why we keep coming back, because I need to get it right. We're in a bit of trouble, guys, and we're in a bit of trouble because same reason a lot of people are in a bit of trouble right now is because it's coronavirus. Shout out Nicki Minaj. Cardi B. See what I mean? My head's not even working. But look, here's the thing. Poppy Appeal. Poppy Appeal raises a lot of money for the Royal British Legion. Royal British Legion do a hell of a lot of work for veterans and their families. Now, I am not a great mathematician, although I did get a C at my GCSEs, so there you go. Now you know my score. Without money, you can't do the charitable work that the Royal British Legion does. So, guys, it's very important that we all get behind the Poppy Appeal this year, even though you're not going to be, like, I'm in Wales. I'm not even allowed to leave my house. Although I have done, because I've come to record the podcast, haven't I? There you go. See, guys, I'm literally putting myself out there and risking imprisonment just for you. But you're not going to be passing these people in the stores who are these noble volunteers. You're not going to be passing them selling the poppies because, one, you might not be able to leave your house, and, you know, like, so there's all these fucking rules and stuff at the moment. So let's just be honest about this, guys. The Poppy Appeal is going to take a massive hit. Right, we need to mitigate that as much as possible. How are we going to do that? By going over to the Royal British Legion's website. It's tagged up in the show notes. It'll be all over my social media for the next few weeks. There'll be a link in my bio if you want to go to. Just click the link in my bio on Veteran State of Mind. It will take you straight through to. There'll be links there for all the Poppy Appeal and everything like that. So please go on there, guys. Please share them as well. I'm going to be putting social media content out so we can get behind them on this. We got to do our part, basically, guys. It's easy to talk a big talk in it and be like, oh yeah, I care about veterans, I care about the families and all that. But we actually got to do something about it. Now, look, not all of you, not all of us are in a position to put your hand in your pocket, because this has been hard year financially on a lot of people. I 100% understand that, and I do not want anyone out there to feel bad because they can't put into the Poppy Appeal what they usually would do. Do not feel bad about that whatsoever. That is not your fault. But you can help in other ways. What are those other ways? You can make a post, spread the word about it, tell a friend about it. There's all this nonsense going on about there's no Poppy Appeal this year. Yeah, there is a Poppy Appeal. It's not going to be out on the streets and stuff as usual because of everything that's going on, but there is still a poppy appeal, and it is as vital as ever. You know what? Actually, it's more vital than ever. Because think how many people, because of this year, are going to be on their ass. Think how many people are going to need help with their businesses. Think how many people are going to have lost their jobs. Think how many people whose mental health has gone down the fucking toilet this year because they've been made to live inside like an animal. Sorry, couldn't help but give a little jab there because I'm fucking pissed off about this stuff, guys. But at the same time, we can help. We can do something about it. We're not fucking victims as veterans. All right, we are not fucking victims. So let's not have that attitude. Let's have the attitude of what can we do to help and what we can do to help. If you've got the money and you want to support the poppy appeal, then please do so. I'll have links to do that and everything. And if you just want to make a post, because posts matter, guys. You never know. We might have a young, good-looking listener out here who has some multi-millionaire following because he likes your angles, right? And you put out a post about poppy appeal and they think, oh, that sounds like a good cause. Boom, £1,000 goes to the poppy appeal. You never know who's looking at your stuff, good and bad. So how about we use that, guys? We have a good amount of listeners on this podcast. We have a good amount of followers on social media. We can raise some good money here, guys. All right? So let's get amongst it. Let's spread the word. Let's put our hands into our pockets. Like, you youngsters out there, go digging behind. Actually, tell you what, go in your dad's wallet. He won't notice. A tenner here, 20 quid there. Go in your dad's wallet. The rest of you, get looking down the back of the sofa. If any of you are planning on getting married and you've got a wedding fund, just raid it. She ain't going to know. There's not going to be any weddings for the next 6 months anyway. So just get in there, raid the wedding fund. We'll figure out the rest of it when we get onto the back end. That money is better needed than the poppy appeal. Guys, Royal British Legion listeners, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We're going to get you back. So we're going to go raise some money on this, guys. If you've got ideas, send them in. But let's just come together as this one on the community, guys. There's so many people out there. World War II veterans, Korea veterans, veterans from the Troubles back in the day. They need our help, right? We're a fucking team, or we not a team, all right? So let's get together on this one. Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it very much. And thanks even more for what you're going to do in supporting the poppy appeal and supporting the Royal British Legion. All right, thanks for listening. Let's get back to the podcast. So what are civilian companies seeing, generally speaking, when they see a veteran? If they're looking at a resume or a CV, as we call it over here. They're looking at that and they see veteran on there. What are the stereotypical things that they're thinking that a veteran might have to overcome? You know, like, because I know I've heard you talk before about, because one of the problems is, and this, I could relate to this, because we don't like to say, I've done this, I've done that, right? But is that something that a civilian company thinks? Do they think this guy can't operate alone? You know, this guy has this issue, this guy that. What are those kind of things that they see, and they're these obstacles that a veteran might need to be aware of going into an interview?
So I worked with a company a nonprofit that helps veterans get ready for interviews, and they had something called the Humility Index. And what they would try to get veterans to do, because it is a fault of ours, because we're so team oriented, we use the word we, is trying to get them to use the word I for 75% of their answers in the interview. I faced this challenge. I orientated my team in this direction. I directed them to solve the problem. And because of my decisions, we were successful, and it brought this much, led to this, X, Y, and Z result. But if you want to know, and let's be honest here, man, the number one bias against veterans when they step in front of the company is, oh my God, does this person have PTSD?
Mm. Oh yeah.
That's or is this person depressed? And again, dude, people that have not served in the military base their positions, their positions on veterans based off, one, the movies, or two, what they see in the news, man. Mm. And neither are painting us in a good light.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that broadly needs overcoming from the veteran community at large, by painting ourselves in a better picture. That's kind of part of the answer. So it's like, you need to realize that as a veteran, is every time you put something out there, it's not just reflecting on you, it's affecting on the community. So if you're all doom and gloom all the time, then that's what people are going to see. I'm going to say something that's going to piss a lot of veterans off, but I'm going to lump them in with millennials for a minute, because I think that one of the things I see a lot from people saying, they're talking about like what millennials are looking for in a job is purpose. And that's something that, veterans are looking for too, is purpose in work. Is that something that you found, and something that's very important for these people that you're placing when they are looking at potential new careers?
Yeah, it is, man. And a lot of vets don't know what that purpose is. But the reality is, you don't have a year or two to figure that out. Usually, your bank account can't, the burn rate can't sustain that. So, what I talk to a lot of them is, some of them want to, man, you and I probably think alike. I think we need to hold veterans accountable. Veterans need to hold other veterans accountable. You just said it. To because the actions of one bad veteran can ruin it for thousands. I want to do something of purpose too, but sometimes you've got to take a job to put food on the table. And what I tell a lot of veterans is, guys, after you've went to war and you loved it and you left the military for one reason or another, nothing is ever going to match that. It's just not. That's the highs of the highs. It is take a job, and even if it's not your passion, become so freaking good at it that everyone's like, man, that person is irreplaceable. Like, if they left the company, it would be a major degradation to the company. And if you become so good at what you do, you will get so much respect. You will start to build purpose. So instead of trying to identify purpose, I think a lot of veterans need to start building that purpose behind what they find. Because again, I've seen a lot of vets are like, I want to go into the tech industry. Well, bro, you've interviewed for like 20 tech positions, and it's been a no every single time. Either do something differently, go educate yourself using your GI benefits, or try to open the aperture and look at different professions that you may fit and can build a purpose around.
One of the things that'd be interesting to know is, considering how much, especially in the American military, because like, even if let's say you're from New York, you might be based in Camp Pendleton, you're effectively a continent away from where you live, which isn't so much of a thing in the British Army. Given that people have probably, they might have spent time in Okinawa or all over the world, do you find, generally speaking, that they are more inclined to move to where the work is, or that they want to then settle down after the military and they want because I see it a lot here. It's like, oh, I can't get the job that I want. It's like, well, were you willing to move to a different part of the country? No. Well, you might not get the job that you want then.
So when I was doing my MBA at the University of Texas, I convinced the business school to allow me to do a research project with 20 other veterans into the systemic challenges facing veterans, and it got approved. One of the things we drew, we came up with a 60-page, sort of thesis from our research. One of the number one things we found is that most veterans want to return to their home of record, meaning where they enlisted or where they commissioned out of. If they were stationed in Camp Pendleton and they were born in the Bronx, they usually want to go back to the Bronx. I get that, dude, because usually that's where your family is and you want to be close to family. Even though you want that, what I will give is just the truth to veterans. If you do that, if you go back to a specific location, you're tied to a specific location, you're limiting yourself in the number of companies, number of industries, and of course the functional roles within those industries. So if that is the case, you have to become very good at networking and conducting the self-search. Now, again, the truth is, if you are geographically mobile, that we call it, you will open yourself to countless opportunities. And if you were in the military and you enjoyed it, you can make, home is where the heart is. And if you can create that new area and just make it your home, then you're going to be fine. But there's other factors too, a military member may be married and his wife's like, I moved 3 times. When we go out, we're going back to. And I get it. She or he, the wife or a husband of a military member is very much part of the decision-making process for that job search.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold it against anyone for wanting to go back to a hometown and stuff, but I do think that people need to understand that, you might have to go to, like, you couldn't have, well, thankfully, you couldn't go and do strike operations down the road from your house. You might not be able to go, you have to go to the other side of the world for it. You might have to move 3 hours away, to get the job that you want. And I think people, need to start to, it's something as a society that I think that we've lost, because that used to be the thing all the way, dude. Like, you lived in Northern California. The reason there's a lot of people in Northern California now is because people moved over there for the gold rush, and now because it's Silicon Valley, so people are there for that. You know, you move to where the opportunity is. Something I want to I don't know if there is a good answer to this or not, but something that popped in my head is, when you're recruiting something, I don't know, like, about you guys personally, or if you see this generally, is, you know, we're talking about character, and one of the things I always think about character is you can tell a lot about it by someone by their physical fitness and whether or not they train. Do you see people like, I don't know if they'd be allowed to do this by law, but do you see companies screening people out if they're not active physically, or if they're out of shape, or if they're massively overweight? Because I'll put my hand up and say I would not hire someone who's massively overweight, because I think it's indicative of being lazy.
I would never say that as well, for purposes. So, you know, let's be honest. Even though somebody may not think they're doing that, there may be a cognitive bias that when they see somebody that's morbidly obese that comes into interview for a job, that is negative in their mind. I mean, the military as a whole follows something called the whole man concept. I'm sure you've heard of that before. The whole man concept is somebody that is well-rounded physically, physical fitness, mentally, and emotionally. And when you think about it, a great soldier has to be all three things. And we put a precedence on physical, because when you have high physical fitness, your ability to deal with stress and to sleep are much higher. I am a believer in the whole man concept, and quite frankly, that was taken also. You can trace that all the way back to the Greeks. It was utilized by the British with your special operators. It was then used by the Naval Academy back in the early 1900s, and sort of brought back to prominence with Army SF. But it was also it was used as a basis to promote physical education within grade schools as well, as part of the component, to make sure that not only are we addressing the physical piece, the mental piece, and emotional piece. For kids to be well-rounded, they need to be physically fit as well. I would never overtly say that that's part of the process. But let's be honest. Remember, in the military, you guys may have had this adage: an ounce of appearance is worth a pound of performance.
I haven't heard that, but I'll dig it.
Or in the military, like, what was it? It was something like, basically, people will judge a book by its cover. The second you walk through the door, if your uniform is squared away, if you're within regulations, people will have a positive perception. But if you walk through the door and your uniform looks like what do we used to say, a bag of ass, more like this guy lacks discipline, and you've already set yourself on a negative tone for that conversation.
I do think as well that this whole man concept is, never mind making yourself a good hire, that it's unique. I think you need the whole man concept to have a happy life.
I couldn't disagree with you whatsoever. And let's be honest. I mean, there's a total lack of discipline with nutrition as well. Mm-hmm. And that's what it comes, do you have healthy habits? Because a way of looking at it is, if you don't have healthy habits, what is your sustainability for this role? How long can you last? Because if somebody has high discipline with the whole man concept, that person may be an eligible employee or leader within your organization for 20 or 30 years. But somebody who is basically a heart disease waiting to happen may only last a few years because they can't deal with the stress.
And this is just my personal opinion, but I think you can't show respect for yourself. How are you then expected to show respect for a company that's like, you're talking about your own life and death. So if that's not important to you, then how is someone that's just giving you a salary? You can't expect that you can't expect that they're going to treat you with respect if they can't treat themselves with respect. Mike, we do have some business owners listening to the podcast, and so I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask you on kind of behalf of those guys for their recruiting. Their recruiting practices. What is the difference and benefits of screening out versus screening in? The difference and benefits of screening out versus screening in when funneling potential candidates for position.
So screening, when you're saying screening people out of your organization?
Yeah, like so if you've got a bunch of candidates coming in, you could screen out or you could screen in. What's kind of the what was your best practice advice on that?
Again, it comes down to a process and know what you're looking for. I will say that a lot of people, when they read the resume, which is a dangerous thing, a resume only gives you a snapshot of somebody's professional experience. It doesn't tell the story of the individual. And when you screen people out because they don't have 5 years of marketing experience, you're potentially turning away a lot of talent. And the industry experience is one of the worst factors with these positions. Who's to say somebody with 1 year of experience can't come in and has a higher learning agility, has the mindset to drive that organization forward? When you have a mindset, and let's be honest, business leaders are also dealing with the reality of time and effort. If you have 1,000 resumes, the truth is, statistically, some people receive 1,000 resumes. They usually don't make it past the first 25. Wow. They'll select a few people out of that 25 and say 5 candidates and move on from there. Part of this process of getting the resume, especially on these online platforms like Indeed or these other job boards, if you don't move quickly and you're the 500th resume out of 10,000, they're probably never even getting to your resume. That's just the reality of the situation. So you've got to move quick. But look for a story. Screen people in and look for the story. Don't look at red flags. The reason we say, oh, well, this person looks like they have this negative component to it. Some of the highest performing SEALs or highest performing individuals in any profession have major drawbacks as well. Major drawbacks. They're usually your biggest wild card. Look at Dennis Rodman is the example. We'll go down in the Hall of Fame for the NBA, but he was a total wild card. So you just got to be cautious of what you're looking for and really identifying what story represents who you want to hire.
I think one of the things that kind of like made me think in the book as well is, you talk about how some people they don't want to recruit the best people because then they're worried about their job security. Because the thing is, in the military, a lot of the times you have great job security. Like if you're a company commander and you're trying to bring in a platoon commander, he's not taking your job. You're set in that position usually for a couple of years. That must be really difficult to convince civilian companies that, hey, dude, the best thing for you to do for your own job is to replace someone to hire someone who could replace you, but it's going to make you look good if you do it.
So this is really the heart of the book too. What does special operations do in terms of best practices? And that's what it is. This book is best practices that any business leader can pick up. What we found is that the guys who are running special forces or special operations assessment selection really are the top of the game for their community. They're the A players, the rock stars. So these organizations, the SEALs, the Green Berets, go and find their rock stars and take them off the battlefield where they really want to be. The analogy to that is a badass salesperson that wants to be on the road making sales call and driving those commissions. But you identify a high performer like that, you take them to the side and say, hey, listen, for the next 6 months or a year, you're going to be running hiring for this company for future salespeople. The reason you want A players in charge of your hiring is A players have the ability to look at the young candidates and say, that person right there has the potential to be a better salesman than me. I'm absolutely going to screen it into the company because they will raise the bar for me as well and they'll raise my level of performance. If you have B or C players in charge of your hiring, you're done. Because B and C players hire out of fear. I'm going to hire somebody that's a C. If I'm a B player, I'm going to hire somebody that's a C player because I don't fear that they will take my job. And that happens. That happens without a doubt infinitely more times than the opposite. And a lot of business leaders, it's hard for them to take their best players off the line because that salesperson is generating revenue, but that is a tactical mindset. Like you said, it's a long game. You take your best player off, you put him in charge of hiring for 6 months, even though he's not making sales call, guess what? He's going to hire 10 salespeople that are going to be have a much more exponential effect on the organization than he will.
It's I remember that in the General Mattis's book, he did that. Like he sent his best players to go and be recruiters, and he said it was a really tough sell because they're war fighters. They want to be fighting wars, but you have to convince them that that's the best thing. Like that's how you're going to bring in the best people to fill out the organization.
It's that team ability that we're looking for, is to put your desires aside for the good of the organization. And yes, telling a warrior that he's coming off the battlefield or she's coming off the battlefield is a hard conversation to have. But if you can explain the why behind it, that the organization is going to continue on long after you retire, and we have to secure the future success of this organization, and we do that by finding the next generation of talent and then training them to be better than us.
That's got to be quite difficult in a company that's like, because obviously in the military, the why is quite easy. We don't want bad guys coming and killing our families. When you're talking about the why is shareholder returns over the next 20 years, that's a tough sell. So how do you sell that to somebody? How do you sell it to somebody and say, like, look, Rockstar, we need you to go to HR for 6 months, and this is why it's not only going to be good for us, but it's going to be good for you. How do you make that sell?
Yeah, you got to explain why it's so important to the organization. And honestly, too, that it's going to benefit that individual as well. If that person can learn the skill of identifying future, like, good talent, they will be more well-rounded as a leader. That's why in the military, I know it's the same for you guys. Yeah, you go to combat, you get your combat deployments, but eventually if you want to stay in the militaries, you've got to go run training at some point. That's by design, because when you have to run training, that means you have to teach people. That means you're coaching, you're mentoring, which we all know training, coaching, and mentoring are three components of becoming a great leader. That's why that is a requirement. You really, if you have a tough time doing that, your organization lacks a talent mindset. It lacks a cultural component that says, hey, listen, we are about the long term. We're long-term greedy. We're about driving results 20 years from now. Yes, we're expected to drive results. The shareholders expect us to have a great quarter every quarter. But if we want to sustain great quarter after quarter for 12, 20 years, it's all going to be dependent on the level of talent. A talent mindset believes, a core belief, that the greatest competitive advantage that any organization can ever achieve is through your people. But we can't find people on our balance sheet. It's hidden. It may be hidden, but it is the top driver of performance in your company. People are out there making sales calls. People are out there building relationships with customers, or they're dealing with problems with customers to solve it so that they maintain their accounts. The other thing that business leaders fail to do is HR, human resources, is just sort of viewed as this tactical operation. It's not a strategic function in a lot of businesses. In fact, in a majority of businesses. To give you an example from our research, the head of HR, either the director or the chief human resources officer, makes 3 times less than their other senior leader peers. That shows you the precedence we put on human resources. I need the business leaders that are leading the companies that are listening to this to understand that you need an absolute rock star leading the human resources or the people operations for your company. And I'll tell you why. You may view HR as a cost center, meaning HR doesn't produce revenue. Look at it indirectly. HR is the one feeding people into sales, into marketing, into other, into your engineering and research and development functions. It actually is your largest revenue generator. That's why you need an absolute rock star leader in that position, creating the strategy for your company to be around 20, 50 years down the line based off people. Every strategy revolves around your people. And that's where a lot of companies also go wrong, is your HR, your head of HR, your director, your CHRO should be in the hip pocket of every leader involved in every conversation relating to that company. If you're going to stand up a new division or stand up a new location somewhere else in the UK, you better have that HR director, because guess what? Who's going to need to stand up that new unit somewhere else in the UK? People. And they're going to go out to find it. They're going to have to go out and find 20 new people to stand that up. And they need to be well ahead of that power curve, and they need time to plan for that.
Man, I love it. And I love the book, and it made me want to go out and hire people. I'm a one-man band, but when I was reading it, I was like, there's so much in there. There's great information in there, but it's written in a really engaging way, and it fired me up. So congratulations on it. I know you and George did a great job on it. Thanks so much for coming on today, mate. It's just flown by. I really enjoyed it.
Dude, I know we met in Austin. We got to get you on the Jocko podcast. I know I've been delinquent on that. But brother, thank you for your service, and thank you for what you do for veterans. Your reach is much farther than mine, and I know we're very like-minded about getting our brothers and sisters to drive forward and do great things with their lives in the name of those who are no longer with us.
Guys, thank you so much for listening today. Mike, thanks for coming on the podcast. Good to have a chat. I hope you guys learned a lot today. I know I did. It made me want to go out and hire people. Hopefully, one day we'll be in a position to do that. I'd love it if we could expand the veteran state of mind family. Remember what I was saying, please, about the Poppy Appeal. It is a very important time of year for raising funds. I know all of us, right, when we're sitting at home and want to go on the old Amazon spree, buy yourself some, well, let's be honest, we're probably buying a lot of socks if you're a single gentleman at the moment. But instead of buying a few socks, why not put that money into the Royal British Legion instead? Or buy some Royal British Legion socks. You know what I'm talking about, you lonely gentlemen. But guys, we really need to come together on this one. We need to start. We need to realise we're heading into a bit of a tough time. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their businesses. It's hard for people's mental health. Do we have each other's backs or do we not? All right. So it's time to, we've all been taught the talk, guys. It's time to walk the walk. All right. And while we're on the subject of supporting veterans, I really would appreciate if, especially you guys, business owners out there, I promise you, I have read The Talent War. It was brilliant. I promise you, if you are a business owner in particular, you will massively, massively benefit from getting The Talent War. It's a great book. And Mike is a great guy. Like I said, I met him when he was helping out, giving his time to come in and speak to veterans in Austin. That's why I was so keen to have Mike on here, because, he talks the talk and he walks the walk. And I don't think I can say anything more positive about him than that. He really is a great bloke. So, guys, please support. The links down in the podcast. Thank you, Combat Fuel, for getting behind this podcast and make it possible. I really appreciate all of you guys. Times like this, it really, really brings things into focus and makes me so fucking, honestly, guys, so fucking grateful to have you guys turning up on a weekly basis, guests turning up on a weekly basis, sponsors coming through on a weekly basis, the Royal British Legion coming through. We have a fucking great community, guys. People bash the veteran community a lot. Are there weasels in it? Absolutely. There's fucking weasels everywhere. But I'm telling you right now, guys, that we are doing good work as a group, right? It doesn't happen without you. It doesn't happen without Peter, the producer. It doesn't happen without Royal British Legion. It doesn't happen without the team, all right? So remember that. Remember it's a team. Let's get behind the Poppy Appeal, guys. Let's make it happen. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you next time. I love you. Bye.
You told me not to worry, and you wouldn't break my heart. You told me you were sorry, yeah, my whole world fell apart. You said it's not my fault, and yeah, I've never done you wrong. I'm grinding to a halt, now I can see you're moving on. I promised I'd get better, and I told you things would change. You keep me to the gutter, yeah, I'll never be the same. I've got to let you go, now live your life and spread your wings. And yeah, you put on quite a show, and pulled the puppet strings. And are you sure that you don't want me? Remember all the pain, or maybe you should thank me. It's your loss and my gain. I'm leaving now forever, I won't hang my head in shame. But yeah, you've taken me for granted, and you should feel ashamed. You sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for. A reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle, yeah.
Life's hard, I know that, still wouldn't change shit. I wouldn't go back, yeah, I wouldn't go back. Feelings I hold back, memories fade, yeah, they go fast, yeah, they go fast. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows. Just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows. Just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose.